All right, we've come to Psalm 145, and not quite at the end of the book of Psalms, but we are at the end of the Psalms of David. There are 73 Psalms with David's name attached, and this is the last of them. Don't know if this was the last he wrote, of course, but it is an appropriate one to finish the collection. We've kind of, I suppose, walked with David through 72 and this now 73 Psalms, all sorts of emotion, all sorts of trial, all sorts of intensity. If you had this much connection with somebody in normal life, you would feel really connected to them. And as we come to the end, it's a song of praise, a song, a psalm in which David praises and celebrates God. Let's just read a little bit of it. It's quite a few verses longer than we can fit into a video, but I encourage you to read it and enjoy it, even sing it to God. I will extol you, my God and King, and bless your name forever and ever. Every day I will bless you and praise your name forever and ever. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised, and his greatness is unsearchable. Almost imagine David at the end of his life reflecting back on his life and concluding that as he moves on into eternity, forever and ever, he's going to be praising and extolling and glorifying God. I love that tone. I love that sense. That's the appropriate ending, isn't it, to a life of faith and a life of trust in this world, seeing God's goodness and God's faithfulness leading to that cry of praise to God. God is great and greatly to be praised. His greatness is unsearchable, but let me say some things about it. So from verse 3 down to verse 13, David is going to speak of God's great love and great kindness and his power that has been seen in David's life. Then from verse 14 on to the end, he's going to speak of God's faithfulness, that God is not only impressively gracious, but he's consistent too. And I think it's important to get those two perspectives put together as we reflect on the way God is working in our lives. There is kindness and goodness and love, and yes, and he keeps on doing it. He doesn't give up. It's not just a flash in the pan. Notice a couple of verses here from the first section. The Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. The Lord is good to all, and his mercy is over all that he has made. These words should feel very familiar. The Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. We see that back in Exodus 33, 34, at that point when Moses is on the mountain and asks God to see his glory, and God says, you can't see my face, but I'm going to let my goodness be seen. And so his glory wrapped up in his goodness, his character, gracious and merciful, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love. That is some of the most often quoted Old Testament language, even within the Old Testament as we see it here. Our God is a gracious, merciful, patient, and abundantly loving God. All right, we can't overstate these terms. He is good to all. His mercy is overall. Then from verse 14 on to the end, it speaks of God's faithfulness, his steadfastness, if you like, toward us. The Lord is near to all who call on him. We're dropping in at verse 18. To all who call on him in truth. He fulfills the desire of those who fear him. He also hears their cry and saves them. The Lord preserves all who love him, but all the wicked he will destroy. This whole section here from 14 down to 20 has been speaking of the faithfulness of God. It's not just a momentary kindness that we experience with God. It's an abundant kindness, and then it's a persistent kindness as well. And so, final words from David. My mouth will speak the praise of the Lord, and let all flesh bless his holy name forever and ever. Maybe if we imagine this being David's last psalm, literally, not just collectively in this book, sort of imagine the senior Saint David as he breathes his last, heading into eternity, still blessing and praising the name of God. That's the way to go, isn't it? Something that we should all want to do. Live in response to God's goodness, experiencing God's faithfulness, and then as our time on earth comes to an end, or Our ministry is done. Go out praising him for who he is, heading into eternity with a forever and ever worship on our lips. That's Psalm 145. That's the last Psalm of David. See you next time for the last little collection, mini collection in the book of Psalms.